All right, here we go on this Monday. My goodness, so much news. Well, we are focusing on the shooting. Hi, Lynn Miller. Yes, we're going to focus on Brown. I am aware and I am glad that they ended up getting Brian Walsh found guilty, but we're going to focus on what's going on with Brown University. We have a lot of news. We're going to speak with our legal expert. Attorney Stephanie Murphy is going to join us. Yes, Brian Walsh is guilty. Folks, I'm actually going to start right now. Hi there, Pamela. Folks, share that you are watching. We are live right now on Facebook and also YouTube and also on X. And yes, that is big on Walsh, but we're going to focus on Brown. And we're going to, I'm just going to start right now as people are filing in. Now, I believe there will be, thank you, by the way, thank you for all the stars. Many of you, if you enjoy the coverage, now you can tell we go nonstop, and I'm going to give you information no one else has. So if you want to support that, I mean, it's a personal thing, but it's a season of giving, as they say. And why not become a regular subscriber? Because we are more valuable than the Providence Journal. I'll tell you that much. So now there will be a briefing later. I will be there and we'll bring it to you live. So, but I want to defend, you check DePietro.com. I want to defend the Providence Police because as I have posted on the website DePietro.com, this was screwed up by Kash Patel. And I believe Kash Patel needs to go. The Providence Police, they have to start at ground zero. And they're checking everything. But they have to go back to ground zero. They almost have to, look at what Kash Patel of the FBI did. And it's so important. I know people are going to bash the Providence Police. I'm not going to. Because at 3:45 in the morning, Saturday night into Sunday, the FBI went to Coventry. They had the tip, and they basically, Kash Patel and the FBI told the Providence Police, we have your guy. We've solved it. They were basically putting that out there. Obviously, that's not what happened. So they're checking everything around there. So, of course, they're looking at the bus. That is true on a tip from the Providence Police. But that was not the right person. And the FBI was doing, to me, a victory lap. So you also have to understand, it's my understanding, that a bulletin went out to all hotels in the area to be on the alert, anyone. I was told the tip came from the hotel. The hotel said someone checked in from out of state. The guy's all in black. They thought they were doing the right thing. But right now, Providence Police have to go back to ground zero. Providence Police have to go back to what if in fact that had good. Okay. Audio strong, good. Video, well, we'll get there. They have to go to listen, that guy, I'll respond to some questions because then we're gonna officially what do you mean what about him? He checked in. He's not the guy. He said, I never left my hotel room. Did he have weapons? Yes. There was no match. He was just someone tipped off, someone from out of town had checked in and was in black. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But as I said last night, they were checking outside the window to see if there's a way to suck out the window. So, okay, well, there's two different things there, Susan. If you had a child attending Brown, is it as Providence a sanctuary city? Yes, but this has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with being a sanctuary city. I believe this was a student. I believe it was someone that picked that target, that classroom, that auditorium. There's a lot of mistakes that have been made here. There's a lot of people that dress all like. So Obviously, the suspect that they keep showing was, in fact, in black. It could be a female. It could be a female. The limp, that seems to be that could be the weapon that was used. Although I am hearing 9mm. So I want to come back. There's a lot of misinformation, and pay no attention. The police have not revealed what was yelled. But I want to come back to right now. They are standing by this, that this is the suspect they're looking at. So you could talk about campus security. You could certainly talk about campus security. We're going to speak with our legal analyst, attorney Stephanie Murphy, coming up. And also, we're still going to try to do our segment, Politics This Week, with Justin Katz. Now, the whole state is on, everyone is jumpy. Warwick Mall, a walker in Warwick Mall thought they saw someone with a weapon. They notified security, and I don't think the person had a weapon. So I posted, with the brown shooter still out there, everybody is on edge. But I believe that this was targeted. And there's a difference. Sandy Hook, many of the school shootings are the person goes and they just start spraying, as disturbing as it is, anyone that pops out. To me, this wasn't that. This wasn't that. So there's someone in the class who may have been the target, and then the rest is just collateral damage, so to speak. And there's a big difference. I covered Lewiston shooting. I think your child could go to school. That's entirely up to you. I believe the schools are safe. I don't believe we have a school shooter on the loose. I believe this is someone, potentially a Brown University student, that was targeting someone in that classroom. So good. Okay. Well, we are live. That's what, you got to step back. Now, should Brown security, should they have had that you've got to use a swipe card to get in? Yeah, they probably should have had that. They probably should have had that. But for whatever reason, they had the building open. They had the building open. I disagree with that. I think schools are safe. I think this was a targeted shooting. Parents are going to decide whatever they want. But this was not what you think of a traditional school shooter. I believe there's motive here. I believe when they catch the shooter, that this person had someone in mind and targeted that auditorium and that individual. And there's more information I know that I'm not going to share just yet. Everyone can make their own decision. The person of interest has been released. The person of interest has been released. You got to understand, when I covered Lewiston, Maine shooting, that was October, card. The FBI, which I normally support, and the state police in Maine, they come in and they steamroll. Yesterday, when Providence Police Chief Oscar Perez was asked, he didn't know that Kash Patel was going to put that out. So now this business, no one saw him. That's not true. People are putting, I can only combat so much false information. It was targeted. Yep. Schools are safe. I don't know what that means. Let me find, I want to put someone, no one saw that. That's not true. What do you mean no one saw him? When someone is wearing a mask and is in black, and you don't, if that happened, you don't suddenly say, people just start running and fleeing. And some managed to, some did not. There could have been more. Now, I've heard he got off 40 rounds. But I think there's a lot of people, pay no attention to some of these people. We don't know what was yelled, but Providence police almost have to go back to as if that person, if the FBI had not leaked that there was a person of interest in custody, and it was the FBI that did that. And then they put out to the Washington Post and NBC News the name of the individual, that Benjamin. By the way, he was in custody as a person of interest, but there was no ballistic match. He did have weapons, but it wasn't the weapon used at Brown. When people say, when I put out that Benjamin Erickson, 24 years old, originally from Wisconsin, was detained as a person of interest, that is true. That did happen. He was also released. So right now they're at ground zero. So there's several mistakes the way I see it. See, they don't need to close down CCRI. And I believe URI is going, they're doing exams, can be online. I think, again, these are all individual decisions without question. But the Providence Police now, they have to pick this up. And that was a tough press conference last night. And that was a tough thing to go through. But we're going to give you the latest. There will be another briefing that I will be live at. So now we're going to start. We also will be joined by our radio partners. Well, that's what's happened. Alex is saying it's crazy how they're blowing the investigation. Not yet, but if you're the shooter, you're definitely thinking like, wow, we have the wrong person in custody. So we are going to begin. And folks, again, there's a lot happening, obviously, on this Monday. There's a briefing later. I think there's going to be a number of briefings. And we're going to deal, in fact, I know there's a lot of speculation, but from what we understand, this is still a very active, very, very active manhunt. The Providence Police almost have to go back to, if that had not happened, meaning yesterday, and if the FBI had not jumped the gun on that, then what would they be doing? So they're a little behind what they're doing today, probably yesterday. So they kind of lost a day a little bit. But right now, we are live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. We're also live on Facebook. We are live on X, and we're live on YouTube. Now, we're going to be doing special programming, a lot of updates. There'll be a briefing told. I believe there's going to be a briefing later today. We're going to bring it to live. We're also going to be live tonight. So right now, there's so much flowing, but I also want to fill in some of the legal aspects of this. I think the briefings, that was difficult yesterday. That was definitely difficult yesterday when you have the governor. I don't think the governor should be there. I don't think the governor adds anything. All right, folks, let's bring her on. And we're going to bring on our legal expert, and is attorney Stephanie Murphy. So, but again, I think they are, this is unusual, and it is obviously very, you can't have a bigger stage. All right, Stephanie, why don't we start with yesterday at a briefing yesterday morning, we were told that the FBI actually put it out that they had detained a person of interest. And at the press conference, the Attorney General, Peter Nerona, was very careful to mention to the colonel of the Providence Police, Oscar Perez, the police chief, that he was not in custody. It was a person of interest being detained. Why don't we start, if you could just explain the difference with that?
Yeah, John, as you just pointed out, the word detained or arrested is, a huge difference in what the word means. So somebody who is detained is somebody who the law enforcement has a reasonable suspicion that they may have been involved in a crime or about to commit a crime. And law enforcement can hold somebody for a certain period of time. During that time, they have to do everything they can to either charge the person or release the person. There is a law on point, which is Rhode Island General Law 1271, that states the detention is about 2 hours or less. But it also comes down to if you're detaining somebody, there also needs to be probable cause to keep that continuation going and that detention ongoing. So it really depends on what information they had, how they linked it to the person being detained, and then what they are doing during the detainment in order to go towards charges or releasing the individual.
Now, yesterday, Stephanie, it was, I think, an example where we see different law enforcement agencies kind of crossing wires here a little bit. You had the chief of police of Providence up there saying it's an open investigation. We're not confirming it or anything. It was the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. He's the one that basically put out that the FBI had this person of interest, had him in custody. But let's play this out at the hotel. At 3:45 in the morning, they go into Coventry. They go into this hotel. They get this individual. From what we understand, the person did have weapons, but that individual, what rights did he have at that moment in time?
Well, that moment in time, he most likely, I don't know all the facts and circumstances of what they had, but most likely he had to go with them. You know, he was getting detained, he was being placed in custody. But at that point, when you're placed in custody, you get your Miranda warnings, you know, that you have a right to remain silent, the right to have counsel and stuff like that. So at the time that you are being, if it's just a casual traffic stop, that's one thing, you know, like a quick stop, that's one thing. But as soon as you're put in handcuffs or led somewhere, if he consents to it, that's different. But most of the time, you're not consenting to it. So at that point, all his rights kind of attach. He has a Miranda warnings, he has a right to counsel, or he could consent to going to the police department. So I'm not sure what happened in this case, but he pretty much had to go with the police. And then he was a person of interest at the time. So the cops have every right to detain him if they have, you know, probable cause to believe that he was involved and, you know, work everything out. But they can't detain him indefinitely. There is a time period, and they have to be working one way or the other to either release him or charge him. And in this case, there's no charges and he was released. I don't know what happened about the guns, in all honesty. I haven't been updated on the guns or any
That is information that I had gotten, that he was in possession of weapons. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about it. They did a ballistic match, and that was one of the things that I believe his cooperation actually, Stephanie, could have helped the police rule him out as a suspect because things
right,
were
absolutely,
not
right?
matching up, right? So,
Right, he
like
would
I was told,
absolutely
he said,
help
I
himself. Yeah.
yes, that he said I never left my room. And they looked at the surveillance in the hotel, and he was not seen leaving his room. That's why then they were outside the room yesterday, like thinking, did this guy sneak out the window? But it sounds as if this individual, whose name was leaked by the Washington Post and NBC News, but Stephanie, as much as people are saying his name was everywhere, it is a fact he was detained as a person of interest and then released.
Right, but you know, he wasn't arrested, he wasn't charged, so you know, all those things that he was detained. I mean,
No.
in any given day, a lot of people get detained for different things that aren't charged. We typically don't hear about it like this, but it does happen. And in this case, he seemed like he cooperated with the police and was able to clear his name, which you normally don't see. You know, on this big of a news story, you normally hear people, you know, incriminating themselves and getting charged because of what they said. But this was a complete opposite in this case. It seems like.
Now, as far as the legal aspect of, you do have the crime scene at Brown University in this building, in this auditorium. It's remarkable they only released that one clip of video of the suspect walking down the street. But I think, are the police doing the right thing by being very tight-lipped? We don't know what type of weapon. It has not been released how many shots were fired. The police, if you could touch on that, they're actually doing the right thing by being very tight-lipped about this.
Yeah, I think it, you know, depends on what they know or what they don't know and stuff like that. You know, the public, we've seen so many recent cases where the public have helped so much, you know, and you know, the detainment of the right suspect in many of these shootings. So I think the public is a great resource, and I'm sure if the officers, you know, receive any information from the public, they'll immediately use it. And so many times it's so helpful. But, you know, you also have the public being scared right now. You know, we thought there was somebody that was detained and possibly charged, which made, I think, everyone feel a little bit better. And now, with no charges and nobody detained or arrested and charged, it's kind of an uneasy feeling. And without getting more information, the public's in a really difficult spot to try to help the police at this point.
Any other observations you have just on the legal aspect of this? Because you did see the Attorney General. Peter Nerona was there. He was pretty adamant, we're not going to charge someone unless we have all the proper evidence. And then he also said, sometimes an investigation can lead you in one direction and then it leads you in another direction.
Well, I definitely think, Peter Nerona, as a head prosecutor in the state and head of law enforcement, needs to be careful because if they do catch the right person, they also want to make sure that they can prove the case down the road. They don't want something that law enforcement does or doesn't do to be the reason why somebody walks free on, really heinous charges. So I think the prosecutors have in their mind that they need to be able to connect the dots, preserve evidence, and show what the probable cause was to arrest and charge this individual, or there might be legal problems down the road. So it's not only, an instantaneous, public safety concern, but there is a concern down the road of the case falling apart in the legal system. I think that's the last thing anybody would want.
Stephanie, finally, folks, again, and it's our legal expert attorney, Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, right now, police are on edge. They're pulling a lot of people over. If you could just give advice to individuals where they could help themselves, it's very possible today, tonight, tomorrow, what have you, but someone could suddenly get pulled over by police. They could be following a lead. If you could give advice on how people should conduct themselves in this situation.
I think at this point, people should cooperate with the police. The police are very stressed right now. They're going through a lot, just like everybody else. So if the police, whatever reason, stop you or, are asking you questions, I don't think they're asking you questions just to bother you or anything like that. They're asking questions to kind of rule you out right away. So I think, basic cooperation, I wouldn't go and admit to you, committing some other crime somewhere else. But basic cooperation at this point, I think would go a long way to get you cleared and have you move on in your day and have the police be freed up for, a tip that comes in or a stop that they need to respond to. So at this point, I would say, cooperate with the police. They're very stressed. Everyone's very stressed, but cooperation goes a long way.
Finally, just the bigger news today would have been if not for this, but Brian Walsh found guilty first-degree murder. Anna Walsh, you and I had talked about that case. That was a unique strategy that they tried. Then he didn't take the stand. Just if you have any passing observation on the guilty of Brian Walsh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the fact that, he admitted to those lesser charges from the get-go. I understand why the defense attorney may have had to do that in all honesty, but you're really not setting yourself up for great success. And then to not have him testify and explain, everything that was going on. So I really think, I'm sure there's great reasons why he admitted to those charges, but I really think that was, what sunk the ship in his case is a jury learning about or knowing about charges that he admitted to about the disposal of the body. It's just kind of a hard story to sell that you disposed of the body but didn't have any involvement in the killing.
Folks, again, it is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Now, we're going to be talking to Stephanie during the course of the week. The big story, this is a national, obviously international story, the manhunt for the shooter at Brown University. Stephanie, excellent job, and we will talk to you later.
Thanks, John. Good luck. Thank you.
All right. All right, folks. I also want to just jump on right now. We are going to talk very briefly to Justin Katz, our segment. But let's just be very clear about something. And that is just because they're not telling everyone everything, it doesn't mean they don't have things. So you got to understand. Let's go through. Police are talking to the students. Not everybody was killed in the auditorium. They're talking to the people that were in the auditorium and fled. They're talking to the people that possibly, you have two deceased, but they're talking to, they were injured in the hospital, perhaps. They're not, just because they're not revealing anything, doesn't mean that right now, that is the footage they released that they have, and they have to look on that. The footage and the image that they have released, and I think it's actually a nationwide manhunt. I understand that people are saying, listen, if you watched last night when we were live, I mean, it's a terrible look. But I can tell you, if you want to just bash negative, but I'm telling you that I'm trying to be objective about this. And to me, this falls into the FBI. It was the FBI and the director of the FBI. And I don't say that lightly or casually, by the way, but they're the ones that put out that they had a person of interest in custody. Now, there's several things that I've also heard. And also, if you have information, you can certainly direct message me. It's all anonymous. I am still trying to talk with, I have made contact with someone who was in the building at the time, very, very shaken up. Some things that I have heard, and that is that 40 rounds went off, 40 rounds were shot. I am told that one individual really took quite a bit of, was shot multiple times. So let's play that out. So one of the victims was shot multiple times. Is that because that was the closest person, or was that the actual target? And then the gunman just starts kind of spraying the crowd a little bit. Now, there's two victims. One of them was with the Republicans on the campus at Brown. It's a fair question. Was she the target? I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the family, but was she in fact the target? Was that the motivation for it? Was it the professor? When you look at that, that individual could be the suspect, could be a student, and because they let everybody, they had someone in custody, and then they let all the students go home, it would be, how do you then say everyone's going to come back? Or how do you say, why did you leave the campus? Well, they told us we could leave. So, but it's very possible that someone, that person, and right now that remains the suspect, the Brown University shooting suspect, that person arrived at that building at that time with the intended purpose to go after a single individual in that room or several individuals in that room. We don't know the motive. So there are two right now, two victims. As far now, let me clarify that. There's two dead. Two people have died. You have 9 injured. 8 were in critical condition. 1 had received just some shrapnel. So 11 total. If it's more than 3, it's a mass shooting. So it is a mass shooting. So as far as why were the other 8, I don't know. Other than if you think of, as someone was explaining to me, when you think of people sitting, if someone is sitting, you're actually a pretty easy target. It's not like you're running. When you're sitting, it's actually easy to fire someone and then look at the parts of the body that that are basically in view. It would be here and then the chest, and now place someone next to me here, and you get the idea of how, if everybody is lined up, I'm here and then you have someone else here, head, heart here, down there. So boom, 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 like that. You could see why then everyone would be, it's far different than if people are standing, they're at a distance. You're at a huge disadvantage if in fact you're in a sitting position in this way. So I want to come back. Yes, ultimately the Providence Police, they are in fact responsible. Was anybody injured from shots that were fired in the hallway? They have not released that. I'll admit there's very, listen, the only thing that police have released is this, and that's it. That's it. Everything else I have learned. I've learned that the guns were not a ballistic match with the individual in Coventry. When we were there yesterday at the press briefing, I mentioned how Providence Police Chief Oscar Perez, he seen thrown that FBI Cash Patel had put out that they had a person of interest in custody. So that seemed very unfortunate, obviously, and that proved to be wrong. So I know there's noise out there, and I know there's people online. Listen, right after this happened, there were people posting, "This is who did it." There's people that do that. Um, we were at all the briefings on Sunday. I was at the briefing yesterday. Granted, not a surprise, but watched the one last night, and I believe that they said they plan on having daily updates. Now, many times, let's look at the clock here. It's Monday afternoon. It's basically at 4 o'clock, it will be 48 hours. So let's go to Boston Marathon again. That was Monday afternoon, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. They had the press conference saying, we're looking for information on these two individuals. And then it ended up being the two brothers. So a lot can happen over a short amount of time. I'm going to come back to, I believe, the police, unfortunately, they kind of lost a day. They may not want to say that, but the fact now they're looking for tips and video, and I see that apparently someone got the hands on this suspect. It's basically just the person a little bit further walking down the street. So they are zeroed in on that. Now, if the police come back and say this video is wrong, that's possible. But at 4 o'clock, it's going to be 48 hours. They lost a day yesterday. It could be gained. There could be, let's go through. It could be a Brown student. It could be a Brown student. It could be someone that has gone home for the winter break and they're acting odd. It could be a roommate telling police this happened. It could be a disgruntled, could have been a breakup right before winter break. What if this individual, and maybe it is female, but they're saying male, they believe it's a male. What if some female in the class broke up with that person right before the break? I understand why, and I think we all see why police are, very tight-lipped in these situations. I believe going forward, it should be Mayor Smiley and Providence Police Chief Oscar Perez, and that's it. If they want to bring Governor McKee in, they do that at their own peril. I think his credibility is shot because of the bridge. I don't think he offers anything. I know they're allowing him this for whatever reason to have this platform, but I don't think we need any more options. I think what people for. We have a lot of people on it, and the killer is on the loose. The killer is loose. But to go back to Boston Marathon, that was a difficult week. I remember the Boston Marathon bombing was Monday, that Monday of the marathon at 2 o'clock, right around 2 o'clock. And that Tuesday, Wednesday, there was scary time in the city. I was actually 6 hours a day, 6 hours a day on the radio, 6 in the morning till noon. I was exhausted. But then Thursday afternoon, they had that big conference, the FBI, and they said, we're looking for these two individuals. So the FBI, to me, they threw off the station now, yesterday. Let's see what the Providence police can come up with over the next 2 days. They may get a clearer picture. What do I mean by that? They may have video of that person getting into a vehicle. They may have that person walking down another street. They may have that individual getting picked up by someone, going into an apartment. There's a lot that we don't know. That individual may have left the state. That individual may be from another state. Like, that is a total unknown. So we don't know who is that person, but police have not come off. They also, I know, more and more people are saying that. I think we are going to have to find them. I'm working on it, but I believe, I'll say this, I don't believe any of that. That is ludicrous. Again, people are entitled to their own. The school are rigged by Democrats. That's moronic. Sandy Hook was not rigged by Democrats. Charlie Kirk, that wasn't rigged. Charlie Kirk, that happened on a college campus, so that's considered a school shooting. That was not rigged. That was this trans person that, you know, but there's a lot, they need to go back to this person. And what was the motive? Let's stick with this person is the person. What was the motive? Why show up at Brown University on Saturday at that time and commit this? Why did that person do that? Who are they and why did they do it? And a lot of questions are going to get answered. You know, this business of the world is mad. People said that. Um, you know, think of what was going on in the 60s. JFK was shot and killed. Martin Luther King was shot and killed. Bobby Kennedy was shot and killed. Um, you know, you had a lot of period of assassinations. I don't know about that, but we don't know until we get to what was the motivation for that individual. And I want to repeat, the police have stayed. They have not put out anything to say that that individual is not the suspect that they're looking for. People are going to make their own decisions. Maybe if you're a parent and you decide this week you want to keep your child home from school, that's your prerogative. But I don't believe that we have a school shooter on the loose. If the FBI had not thrown everything off yesterday, then you would have been looking at Saturday night. I was at the press briefing, and what was I asking? Was there someone thrown out of that class? Was there someone in the class that this person that broke up with this person? Is there someone in the class that was texting with this person? Did someone have an altercation with that person? Did Brown University get a threat of someone? Was there someone that descended into the area for that purpose? There's a lot of things. I want to go back to the classroom, the teacher, who was in the classroom, who wasn't in the classroom. I believe that's where a lot of those things come out. So, okay, you can feel that way. Providence Police made an embarrassment to the state. Okay, I don't feel that way. And I'll tell you why, Heather. You're entitled to your opinion. I believe the FBI put them in a very difficult situation. So, yes, did they apply and not get accepted? Very, very possible. Now, we're going to do a very short segment. Normally on Mondays, we do politics this week. Obviously, the shooting and the manhunt is the big story, but there's still a lot of politics involved. So let's bring him on. He is the managing editor of anchorrising.com. There he is. And it's Justin Katz. Justin, first of all, some of your initial thoughts on this Brown University mass shooting.
Well, obviously it's terrible, and you never want to see this. There's no words for the families and for the other students that were affected by it. You just hope that there's a quick resolution, and that we find a way to reduce these things and make them so they're even more rare than they are. I mean, there's really not much more to say as a baseline to that. Generally, though, I do wish we would, as a community, be a little less quick to kind of cower and close everything down. I think we need a bit more fortitude. I'm thinking of in particular that in Australia, where they had a horrible Hanukkah shooting. Somebody actually charged the gunman and grabbed the rifle from him.
Yes.
I think I'd much rather see that than schools closing down, Christmas events at the State House being canceled. I don't think it serves any purpose. I don't think, and I think we really need to find a way to improve that balance a bit. I mean, that's kind of my baseline reaction to these events.
Now, it's impossible to take the politics out of this because they make themselves part of this whole process. Let's start off with your initial thoughts and reaction. Tell me your thoughts on Providence Mayor Brett Smiley, how he's handled himself during this.
Well, let me preface by saying in these events, I try to cut public officials a lot of slack, especially at the municipal level, these events are incredibly horrible, and they're still incredibly rare. So if you get public officials in a city, especially in a city or town situation, who are able to instantly perform well in press conferences dealing with something like this, you're just lucky, especially in Rhode Island, where, let's be honest, we don't elect people because they'll be good in a situation like this. If we did, we'd have many more veterans in office. We'd have many more grizzled retirees who've been CEOs or doctors, or we'd have much more of that. We don't elect those people. So I think they do all right, and it's a tough situation. That said, I think he's done all right. I mean, the mayor's done a lot of press conferences in his time. He was on, Gina Raimondo brought him on stage all the time for her COVID press conferences.
Yes.
So he's got that experience and that comfort. But what starts to irk me is the kind of the self-congratulatory nature of it all. And some of this isn't Mayor Smiley's fault. I mean, Dan McGowan in the
Yeah.
Boston Globe layered on into ridiculously thickly how great a job the mayor was doing. And it just, that I find very hard to take, particularly as we're entering having events canceled. So he's doing all right. I'm not inclined to jump all over him, but I think, I mean, he's not doing anything particularly astounding the way Dan McGowan seems to think.
Well, that column also came out yesterday when they thought they had the person, the person of interest was in custody. My thought on this, Justin, is, to me, Rudy Giuliani in the aftermath of 9/11 is kind of the gold standard. After that, every public official kind of tries to live up to that. In Rhode Island, we had, going back to Governor Joe Garrahy, I remember that, the blizzard of 78. You had Governor Kucheri in the aftermath of Station nightclub fire. I think Mayor Smiley yesterday seemed like he was kind of on the right path. It's also an interesting dynamic, though, that, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but with these universities, we kind of have, I mean, they are part of the city of Providence, but they're almost like sub-cities in a sense, because it's the Brown University campus, and they have their own police, and they have their own buildings and so forth. So in many ways, they're very reliant on Brown University providing protection and doing what they're supposed to. That's going to be discussed a lot. If you have a system where your ID swipes you into a building, why on earth would you not have that in existence 24/7? Now, we don't know, is it possible the gunman, the shooter who's on the loose could be a student and still gotten in? Or was it someone that then, followed the crowd and gotten in? If they had been locked, but during the course of the day, and I'm sure it's going to change, you don't need that. Now let's talk about the decision to include Governor McKee. Now, as you and I have talked about, this is not, to me, his strength. Words matter. Saturday night, he said, I'm happy we can provide resources for the city, which is a word you never use. But Justin, your thoughts on, so far, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee?
Well, I guess we can say he hasn't stepped in any big gaffes. I mean, I've watched a few interviews of his, very uninspiring, not confidence engendering. It's almost like a bureaucrat in the office who's giving some updates on what the office is doing. That's kind of the vibe you get. But on the other hand, I don't expect much more out of him. So it's not a fair judgment. I mean, it's just, he's not inspiring, but Rhode Island didn't elect him to be inspiring, or they wouldn't have elected him. So I haven't seen him do anything terrible, I guess, is that. And he is, as you make a fair point about, even the city has to rely on Brown. He has to rely on the city, and also from the other end, the federal. So he's not front and center. So I guess in some regards, I kind of congratulate him for not. You could see somebody like him bumbling his way in to be the star. He's not doing that I've seen. So that's a good point on his scoreboard, I guess.
My takeaway is, we've seen his poll numbers and they're atrocious, and all they keep saying is the only thing that possibly save him would be if there was some event and then he rose in and kind of rode in as a hero. The problem I just can't get away from is the bridge. I think he's damaged. I'll say this, Justin, my thought, I think he's hurting Mayor Smiley. I think he's an albatross. I don't think Governor McKee should be there. And to me, you don't want someone who's desperately looking for a way to save their campaign and maybe set their sights there. I don't think he adds anything. Very reliant on notes. He's never gotten better. He's never gotten better than when he was just the bumbling, to me, lieutenant governor. Now, yesterday, FBI director announces, oh, we have someone in custody. And we're the ones that grabbed him. Huge mistake. I'll say right now, I think President Trump should get rid of Kash Patel. Too many mistakes. There was no need for that grandstanding. But as a result of that, who did we have at the briefing yesterday? Senator Reid and Congressman Gabe Amo. Now, in fairness, they thought they had the person responsible, person of interest in custody. The person was released last night. But what did you make of Senator Reid and Congressman Gabe Amo?
Well, I mean, a lot of the commentary from Amo jumped right into the gun violence, Second Amendment stuff, which is predictable and just disappointing to see from him. And so I've seen some interviews with him where he rattles off that long list of self-congratulatory stuff that really bothers me so much. Reid did the same thing. This brings out the best in Rhode Island. And what does he lists instantly? Government employees and government officials, that kind of stuff. I think put that aside. And as you say, to be fair, they thought they had somebody. They thought they had something. Even so,
yeah.
The commentary trying to take credit for things or to say we got them, they're just so quick-footed with it. And there was, I don't know if it lasted this long, but there was a similar dynamic after the Charlie Kirk shooting, where there were false starts. There were a lot of people saying you're doing a terrible job. There are saying things that they shouldn't say. So it's a tough situation for them, and I have sympathy for that. But I wish they would leave the instant leap onto politics. Magaziner had some similar commentaries about, I guess I think about Kash Patel, but emphasizing how Donald Trump was doing bad things. Let's just put that aside, especially at this time. And I think that's why. I don't know. I don't have any view inside the White House, but I think that's why you get these kind of responses. Like, we got the guy, because everybody's jockeying, and there's no forgiveness at all, right? There's no, all right, it's going to take the FBI some time. If it takes a little time, then they're attacking them. If it doesn't take time, then you're jumping the gun. It's a tough situation, and I think collectively we've got to be a little bit more patient with that, because it creates these political incentives that are really just horrible.
It does. And much like Congressman Seth Magaziner, a photo op of him giving blood, I mean, to me, they just don't add anything. We've listen, and I agree with you. This is not an easy situation. But to me, when you're looking for information, Justin, I also just quickly mentioned, notice, to me, the Providence City Council, who is constantly anti-police, anti-ICE. I saw them there. Rachel Miller, you and I know members of the council. They're constantly talking about, defund the police and that attitude. What it illustrates to me is they are useless in a situation when you have a mass shooting. I think this should change the dynamic of how Providence and the elected officials in Providence, how they really look at public safety in the city. Because as we are seeing, and you and I have talked about, and I've said this, if you don't have safety, everything breaks down. Look at how right now, Saturday night, the city went into chaos. There's false alarms. People are starting to see things. People are keeping the kids home from school. If you don't have safety, then everything else falls by the wayside. And to me, in a situation like what we are experiencing right now, this whole business of pronouns, this whole business of, free Gaza, and that is all BS. What you need and people want right now is, who is the person responsible?
Right. And I think that you make a very important point. We can't have the anti-police people running things, not just because they undermine police, but they create a false impression of security. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, you would get the impression they want cameras on every block so that we can get get photos of these people. And I'm kind of in libertarian in the sense I'm saying, hold on, let's not just inundate ourselves with cameras because this happens from time to time. But the reason people want cameras is because we don't have that confident leadership. I mean, if you had a police force where you could see them out in the community, you had a lot of confidence in them, you said they'll get the guy. If you had that feeling, people would calm down. You wouldn't have these, let's close all schools, let's put cameras everywhere, we're unsafe. You need that. And I think the lesson to me is for all of us as an electorate is let's start to put people into office who we're confident will do the things that will keep us safe without cameras, without closing down a Christmas event at a drop of a hat. That's what we need, is that baseline sense of competence and security. And I think this event, that might be something that, I mean, I don't want to turn it into a political opportunity, but that might be, if there's candidates out there who are thinking, you know what, I've got a lot of experience running things smoothly and dealing with this kind of thing. I'm going to put myself out there for office and show people what it looks like to be a candidate who can instill that kind of confidence. I think that would be a compelling lesson for future candidates, and they'd give us better options in Rhode Island.
You know, just finally, and you and I talk about this, but to me, like this is showing why you can't have a David Morales as the mayor. Enrique Sanchez, David Morales, his brother Miguel Sanchez, Justin Royas, 24/7. You can't go from we don't want flock cameras, police are the enemy, nobody should, they're anti-police, anti-ICE, and then suddenly you turn around to the community and say, oh, by the way, if you have information, contact the police, give you a video of the police. You can't have it both ways. I think this event, this is the end. Let's see how Mayor Smiley does, but I think this is the end of the David Morales candidacy. Justin, finally, this is a situation, people, if you're an elected official, you're running for office, you're going to be really cautious in a situation like this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there is the Republican who's running. She's a woman. She's never run before. And I sent you, Ken Block is going after her. She is leaning into going full blown on conspiracy stuff, and this is the cause and so forth. Maybe that appeals to some people, but I think it's an example in a heated atmosphere like this, and you're running for office, you got to be really cautious about what you're putting out there.
Well, I certainly agree. I think Ken gets a little overheated in this sort of thing, calling for the GOP to cancel, to criticize her and denounce it. We've discussed her candidacy in the context of other candidates, but I don't think there's anybody who kind of would characterize her as a front runner. I don't think as an endorsed candidate, so she put out comments that were they would be standard fare for people talking among themselves, or even on privately messages or on a small Twitter stream. You'll see these things all the time. She's not sufficiently aware that she's running for office. But what's interesting to me is there's a lot of stuff in that. I got into back and forth with Ken on some of that. Some of the information, like there are still news reports out there saying, quoting students, witnesses saying the guy said Allahu Akbar. I mean, Yahoo News has a report on that. Whether it's credible or not, I don't know. Yahoo News is a credible source. So it's interesting that, there is that kind of, who knows where she's getting her information. Some of it might be true, some of it not. But yeah, if she wants to be a credible candidate, she's got to get that under control.
Yeah, folks, again, we'll do a more extended segment, but it's politics this week. Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com. Justin, excellent, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, John. Talk to you soon.
All right, folks, there it is. And again, I also want to touch on, so there's several things I find about this story that needs to be highlighted. And one is, from my understanding, I know a lot of people are asking where are the cameras? And Brown has a lot of cameras, but it's an old building that they are adding on a building and kind of merging it to become a new building. So it's my understanding, as a result of that, they do not have the type of cameras. You can believe whatever you want, but I'm being told they don't have the type of cameras in that building that they have in some of the other buildings. That's number one. Number two, Someone who will come under fire is the head of Brown Security. Now, you may have seen him at, oh, and I also want to mention, so there are two confirmed dead. One is this individual, Brown student, Muhammad Azi. He's from Uzbekistan, I believe. Let me just pull that. Yeah. So he is, I think he's certainly a foreign student, Muhammad. So he is one of the victims. Brown student Muhammad Azi was killed in the shooting. And then you also had, of course, Ella Cook, who was the vice president of the Brown University College Republicans. So I am told that she was shot multiple times. But I want to just back off. You got to understand, Providence Police, they want to solve this. So no one should think that things are being held back. Again, I understand the element of free speech. If you want to say they're trying to cover and they're trying to, I don't believe that. But then, some of you could be in the Candace Owens camp that you believe that the U.S. government is behind taking out Charlie Kirk. And that certainly didn't, that can't. So but it is significant. There are two fatal. Now, we don't know the condition of the others, but I want to come back to, so the person who is in charge of Brown Security, here's what we know about, and I know about that individual, and I want to just about him that I end up being, I think this is someone who could end up facing a bit of blame. Rodney Chapman. So the guy killed went to high school in Virginia. Okay, he went to high school in Virginia. So he was never a police officer, never worked anything of note except campus security. Rodney Chapman, head of security at Brown. He was the one yesterday. I didn't even know who he was. He was just in a red shirt. So communities don't want policing done to them. They want campus safety initiatives developed in partnership with them. The recognition at Brown that safety is more complex than policing, that success in ensuring well-being take authentic engagement across the community, made it clear that joining Brown was the ideal opportunity for me. So again, he's never been a police officer, but they made him head of Brown Police. He was never a police officer, working except campus security. Rodney Chapman. So now the individual that was killed, so he went to a high school in Virginia, but I did want to mention him as well. So I believe right now, where's this? Well, right now, if we want to back up for a moment, it's my understanding there's going to be another briefing later today. That's what I'm operating under the guise of that. They plan on doing more updates. I think it's going to be tough at this point. As I have told you, I think they're working a little bit behind. And what I mean by that is what they're doing today, because there are reports that, the Providence Police are all over now, and they're going door to door, and they're asking for ring. As the manhunt continues, federal agents are going door to door in Wayland Square asking for surveillance video. So they're all over there. I'll probably we'll be over there at some point, but I'm trying to get info. So yeah, they are going door to door, and I'm seeing that someone is posting out of respect for Ella's family and memory. Wait till the police finish their investigation before speculating about any motive. So I don't know about that. Mayor Smiley was on Good Morning America. Fear grips College Hill. Everyone is back on edge. Muhammad and Ella, they were the two killed in the Brown shooting. But let's come back to, so obviously the AI has technology, but Kash Patel, they jumped the gun by saying this whole business of that they had a person of interest in custody. As I talked about yesterday at this time, 24 hours ago, if you briefing, you had Senator Reid there, you had Congressman Obama, everyone felt, look at that. And as I stated, I even said to police, wow, look at that. They solved it in such a short amount of time. They less than 12 hours. That is not the case. So now is when they're going door to door and they need to piece together everything. I'm going to caution people. I know right now people have a right to be in our, people are upset about what's about the reaction from law enforcement. But I think Providence Police directing this with their detectives, with the assistance where they need it from FBI and gathering it and speaking with one voice, I believe they can get this thing on track. And I believe they're going to have a clearer picture as today concludes tomorrow. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not saying they're going to have someone in custody. But what we know is I believe this is, this whole business of someone drove 17 hours from Wisconsin, that clearly, that did not pan out. But it can't be ruled out. I think a mistake was also made by them sending everybody home from the college. So Brown students were allowed to go back. So all the witnesses that were there have essentially left the campus. One of the people that, from that country went to high school in Virginia, Muhammad. So my point is that the person responsible, the shooter at Brown, absolutely could be a student or could have been someone that had a with someone in that particular auditorium. Economics class. This was a prep for the final. It was being done by a teaching assistant. It was not being even done by the professor. They have not backed off that they believe this is the person responsible. Yes, Brown has security cameras, but it's a large campus. It's also a city campus. So I'm going off this. Does Brown have security cameras? Of course they do. They have cameras all over the place, but that's the only thing that they have revealed is that individual. So anyone that would ask that, no offense, but it almost makes me, no, I don't think so. The shooter could be anyone. I disagree with that. No, the shooter's not anyone. The shooter is someone that knows that school, that building, that auditorium, and that class. So that wipes a lot of people out. Actually, the shooter is on a very short list of people. No, I don't believe that. I believe this sounds like it was targeted. Someone showed up at that building. This person showed up at that building at 4:00, or maybe got there earlier on Saturday, went in, committed the shooting, we believe fired off 40 rounds, and then exited. That sounds very, very targeted to me. They didn't go on then a spree. If you were just a shooter looking to take out a lot of people, they could have gone to downtown. They could have gone to, there were people at the PPAC for the Boston Pops. There was some event at the AMP. That's not what this is. There hasn't been another shooting. Remember with the Boston Marathon bombing, they killed the MIT guard as they were then to get his gun. So that's not what this is. So I reject. I don't think they could have gone to the school before. That is exactly right. Or they could be a student there now. But I don't believe someone just decided to go up there at that time, how would you know anyone? It's a Saturday. How would you know that there would even be anyone there? If anything, it didn't happen on Monday through Friday. You would think that who would be there on a Saturday at 4 o'clock? No, I don't. I believe, yep, someone there. He knew time and place. Yep. Now again, this was a preparing for a final. So I believe this individual. It could be. You know, um, could be something like I said. How about somebody that? What happens before Christmas break? People break up with people. It could be the stress of finals. Remember, they're going to take their final exam and then they're going home for the break. So it absolutely could be that. That person could be a disgruntled lover, for lack of a better description of it, but absolutely could be someone who had just been broken up with, so to speak. But and I think this is really important, and that's why it could be. But if you were fired, why would you show up at that time in that auditorium? Now you got to understand, it's the Saturday before finals, or some people are taking exams at that time. Why that building? There's other buildings. Why not a dorm? Why not go after? We've already gone over who it is. We've already gone over it. That is absolutely not true. I reject that. Speculation as opposed to what? I'm not going to put up with that. This is not. This is how we break things out. You're going to get a lot more than you're going to get from some other places. So it's very possible. Yep. Whose roommate was acting suspicious? That's another good element of that. Yes. Guy found out his girlfriend broke up with him for a vacation. They all know they're going to leave. And before he or she, maybe it is a female, we don't know. Maybe it is a spurned lover. But guess what? Before you're going home for winter break, boom, boom, boom. I wouldn't say all possibilities. See, and again, I'm not trying to, yes, it was a Saturday. This was not a Monday through Friday. And also, let's be clear, this wasn't a grammar school. Most of the time, it's very young children. You had the church shooting. This isn't Sandy Hook. This isn't, I disagree with that. Sadly, they'll never catch him. I see. Here's the thing: you can put a statement like that, but then if you're wrong, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, maybe that is. I mean, they're saying it's a male. They are saying it's a male, no question about it. But I did have someone send me a message saying I think it's a female. I think they will as well, Janet, and I'll tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why I think they will eventually now catch this person, is because I believe it's connected to Brown University. It's connected to the people in that class, the students that were there for this prep. To me, this person knew who was going to be there and went directly towards them, and then went into that auditorium and then started firing. So, okay. I mean, at this point, I am open to anything. I believe this person will be caught. I do. But I believe this is targeted. And and I think that's very important. This is not someone just, like I said, Sandy Hook. Adam Lanza shows up and starts firing. He shoots through the glass. He gets the principal. He gets someone in the hallway. Anyone that was popping up, he's fired. This was not that. And this individual, by the way, they're not shooting at cars. They're not shooting at people down. This is into the classroom, take care of business, exit on their way. They didn't go on a spree, let's call it for that. There was not then, it wasn't just going off. The two brothers with the Boston Marathon, they were then going to try to head to Times Square and just totally go off in a barrage. It's not that. I think that's what it is, Caroline. And we've done enough of these, folks. I realize we get all kinds of new people. Okay, they shot several people targeting the class, not just the person. But let's talk about that. It's very possible that there were other people then starting to run at the person. Or maybe maybe there were several people that they were after. We don't know. It is... We followed Aaron Hernandez all the way to Mass. They can't find that guy. Well, it hasn't even been 48 hours. That's right. That's a good point. Hopefully someone notices something odd. So it can take a while. I am telling you right now, I have faith in the Providence Police Department. I want to go on record. I have faith in the Providence Police Department. I have more faith in the Providence Police Department than I do Governor McKee or Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. I have faith in the Providence Police Department. I think the FBI assisting Providence with what they need, I believe they will catch this person. 48 people were fired because of budget cuts. I have no idea what that's about. It is. And they lost a day, Jeremy. They did lose a day. Yep. No. You're way behind on that. No, he's in the clear. That was a tip. That's exactly right. The state needs to stay strong. We're the state, not them. It's not Governor McKee. It's not these people. So these people, I am going on record right now. I have faith in the Providence Police Department. I have faith in Colonel Oscar Perez. I have faith in Deputy Chief Commander O'Hara, Major LePayton, Dennis O'Brien, all of the command staff. They have great detectives. They have the proper leaders. With the assistance with FBI for technology, I believe they're going to, over the next 24 to 48 hours, have a much cleaner image of who they're looking for. I do. There's been dispute on that. And I want to tell you, I know that someone is claiming, that's right. Where is Chafee when you need him? We already have him, Governor McKee. They have not said a motive. I know that people are, thank you, Janice. I know, and I want to be very clear. I have faith that they are going to catch this person. I do, and determine who it was. So I know this is being asked. And I've heard and seen people say, he yelled Allah Akbar. We don't know that. He could have yelled, profanities at someone. So there was someone shot 10 or 11 times. That sounds very personal. If you go after that person and maybe you yell, you fucking bitch, and fire. That's not Allah Akbar. I at this point, I want to be very clear with all of you. I don't know what to think at this point, but we do know that that person of interest was not the right person. And that was the FBI jumped the gun. Kash Patel should not be there. Too many screw ups. Saturday, he told President Trump, we got him. President Trump tweeted out, suspect in custody. Wrong. Yesterday, Kash Patel, FBI captured the person of interest. Wrong. He was wrong on Utah. Enough. The amateur hour stuff, he's got to go. Let the police do their thing. I also say this. I think Mayor Smiley is the right person right now. I think Mayor Smiley is probably the best person who is on the scene right now. I do. And he has the right police staff, the right police command. with the assistance of the people, them getting things they need, and Providence leading the investigation, I am very, very confident, as you should. I believe that person could still be, I don't know. I am leaving everything but on the table. There's only a couple things we know. We do know the FBI jumped the gun announcing they had a person of interest in custody. That much we know. I have heard they fired 40 rounds. I have heard that one individual really was shot multiple times, like 10 or 11 times. It could have just been because they were the closest. I don't know. The police have not backed off that this is the individual that they are looking for. So it could be, okay, Brown had 48 layoffs, 55 unfilled budgeted positions eliminated. Maybe that's what it is. I am telling you, I am open. I am open to anything. Now, see, here's where misinformation. None of the students of the hospital could describe him. Where are you getting that from? How do you know that? Where did you read that? What is your source on that? Is that a question or a statement? None of the students in the hospital could describe him? I haven't heard that. And then Louise, you're the one that just typed it. None of the students in the hospital could describe him? Who told you that? I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that at all. You know, the eyewitness teaching assistant did say long gun, and that could be why there's a limp. But then I've heard it was a 9mm. So, you know, eyewitnesses can be unreliable. So I also want to caution people, this goes a lot smoother if you then list your source. So, see, you put it as a question, but that's not how you listed it. So the question, oh, now she says it's a question. Well, the question should have been, could anyone in the hospital identify? That's not the way it's worded. Could any of the students in the hospital describe the person? That has not been released. That is not phrased as a question. You're making a statement. None of the students in the hospital could describe him? I don't know where you're getting that from. I don't know that to be the case. Question mark assumes a question. Yeah, but not when you phrase it like that. All right, listen, we're going to have more. I believe there's going to, make sure you follow the page. Follow us on Facebook. Now, again, follow us on YouTube. Follow us on X. So it was reported the individual was wearing a mask. Yes. So that is exactly right. I did hear that. I know that the teaching assistant said that. What I'm telling you is people, the memory can sometimes, you know, just finally on that, I know the person said that. I read that as well. But I'm hearing it was potentially a 9mm. People, if someone is firing a weapon, someone may say, I thought it was a rifle. I mean, that's why human memory is not perfect. How many times do people say, where's the ambulance? It took forever to get there. It seemed like a half hour and the ambulance was there in, 2 minutes. Memory is not perfect. People remember different things. Things go to different ways. I thought it was that just finally, as many of you know, there's been experiments in the college campus where the professor has people come in and they rough him up and then leave. And then everyone has to write down, what did you just see? Some people say 3 people. Some people say 4 people. Some people say it was all men. Some people say, like, people, never mind the sheer madness of that moment. So I don't know that. Hopefully we're going to try to find that out. So I have not heard that. All right, we're going to pick this up. I believe there's going to be a briefing later. Follow this Facebook page. Follow this YouTube page. Follow us on X. And thank you, everybody. We'll bring you the latest later.